So the dynamic of the Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat contract situation and the way it's playing out, it's revealing a brand new dynamic that NBA fans are going to have to get accustomed to, which is almost like an NFL style type of holdout due to the new CBA. There's always going to be a contract situation that's going to cause a player to almost be at odds with his franchise while he's still playing there. And this is going to be very unique because we've never seen productive players in the NBA go through this. But due to the new limitations of the new CBA, with teams just getting very harsh penalties for going over that second apron and the luxury tax, scenarios like this is going to be almost to a degree the norm. And for the Miami Heat, they're almost calling Jimmy Butler's bluff to pick up his player option because they understand that there's not really that many teams that's going to offer him $50 million plus. And again, this new CBA puts kind of the middle tier players in an interesting predicament. Let's just say the Heat want to offer Jimmy Butler an extension for about $30 million a year, maybe for 2 to 3 years. That's almost on the same level as a contract when you look at a guy like Emmanuel Quickley. But Jimmy Butler does not have Emmanuel Quickley responsibilities on his team. He's actually the 1A. He's actually the guy that's supposed to come through in the clutch. He's looked at as the leader. And there's a few players in the NBA that's kind of facing these scenarios. We see Julius Randle out in Minnesota. He's due for an extension as being the second option. Same thing for a guy like Brandon Ingram. And I would say an ideal number those guys are probably looking for is $40 million or $43 million plus per season, which puts them a pay grade ahead of a guy like Emmanuel Quickley or guys on that tier that are kind of like players who had a breakout season, but not necessarily the responsibility. And this is where the new CBA gets kind of tricky because it's clearly obvious guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Luka Doncic, you break the bank for those type of players, $60 million plus, no questions asked, they're going to get their extensions. But again, it's that middle tier where we see a huge gray area. And right now between Jimmy Butler, Jonathan Kuminga, Julius Randle, it's almost like a rush to see who's going to take a low ball offer first. But we're going to hear from Jimmy Butler directly on what he had to say. But first, I want to start off with Pat Riley during the summertime, as he was asked questions about Jimmy Butler's extension, and he instantly took a position of power instead of desperation that sometimes we see other NBA teams display with their franchise star. They sometimes take the position as, oh my God, we don't want to lose you. But instead, Pat Riley instantly took a position of power, understanding that he really is the one that holds all the cards. You guys check it out.
With Jimmy's extension window opening July 7th, though, he can request an extension starting on that date. Typically, in his past, he has done that. Typically, there has been, I don't want to say pressure, but there has been discussion.
There's no pressure.
Okay.
Now, you notice right there, Pat Riley instantly taking a position of power right there. I just wanted to point that out because the media sometimes they make these franchises seem like the desperate boyfriend that's trying to get the girlfriend back. But Pat Riley right there instantly taking a position of just like, hey, Jimmy needs us. Yeah, Pat Riley, he doesn't play any fucking games.
Okay.
The last extension was, we gave it to him.
So when Jimmy approaches July 7th for an extension, what will the Miami Heat's response be at that date that his extension window opens?
Well, I mean, if he requests, we can either accept or we can say we're going to think about it, or we have not made a decision on it. I think you can make too much out of this. He's still got 2 years left on a contract. Theoretically, he's got a player op. But that's something that we have to give some real thought to based on a lot of factors. I don't want to go through the litany of factors right now because they all blow up into different hypotheticals. But yeah, that's a big decision on our part to commit, that kind of those kinds of resources, unless you have somebody who's really going to be there, available every single night.
So that was during the off season, and knowing how Jimmy Butler rolls, he's always fighting for his money. Franchises have always played games with him and just understanding his value and what he brings to a team. Keep in mind that this is a guy who's been to 2 NBA finals in the last 4 seasons. But good old Jimmy Boy is beginning to act up. And that should come by no surprise. Let's take a look at what he had to say in regards to his situation and what kind of energies he's kind of giving off to the team currently. You guys check it out.
Jimmy, when do you feel like your role in the offense changed, and what has been the toughest adjustment to that change?
It's not a tough adjustment to me. I'm going out there to compete to win either way. Whether I score 9 points or 29 points, I will compete. That's one thing that I will say. So you won't say that I'm out there not playing hard. It may look like that because my usage is down and I don't shoot the ball a lot, but we won't sit here and say that I don't play hard.
What will fix it? What do you want to see happen to fix it?
What do I want to see happen? I want to see me get my joy back from playing basketball. And wherever that may be, we'll find out here pretty soon. But I want to joy back. I'm happy here, off the court. But I want to be back to somewhat dominant. I want to hoop, and I want to help this team win. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Now, again, the fans are caught in the middle of all this, and I don't think the NBA players have taken their union as serious because they're making so much money. But now they're beginning to adapt and understand how the new CBA really could affect them from getting the big money. You see, in this new CBA, the owners let the players actually get a higher percentage of the revenue. But the real trick is they limited the players' access to the brand new revenue due to the restrictions that they placed on the franchises themselves for going over a certain number into the luxury tax. It's definitely a double whammy because at the same time they limited player movement. That's why Paul George is really the only unrestricted free agent we've seen switch teams. Other than that, everybody else is either they grown disgruntled and they got traded, or they switched teams through some sort of transaction. But it's not necessarily them being an unrestricted free agent. And that's why I made the analogy that the NBA finds themselves almost in a NFL franchise tag situation with their players and the franchises. We're going to see a lot of disputes, a lot of passive aggressive, not necessarily holdouts because the players can't do that, but we're going to see them complain, attitude changes. Even Paul George had reflected on that during his last season with the Clippers. Him not reaching a contract extension in the beginning of that season really affected his approach while being on the team during that year. And for Jimmy Butler, this should not come by surprise, as the Miami Heat is a franchise that has a long history of not necessarily paying guys. Their owner does not like to go into the luxury tax. Hell, even when LeBron James, an all-time NBA talent, was there, they weren't necessarily dipping into the luxury tax. They had guys take pay cuts, and they sort of adapted and built the roster around LeBron James while not necessarily dipping into the tax. Pat Riley actually reflected on this during that same press conference when he was asked about Jimmy Butler's extension. And keep in mind, if Pat Riley's not willing to dip into the luxury tax for LeBron James, he's definitely not going to do that for Jimmy Butler.
So going into the tax and going way into the tax to win a championship, you better be damn right about the guy you're going to get and what you're going to give up for him. And so it didn't happen even with the big three until we solidified the bench the next year. Yeah.
So Jimmy Butler being age 36, not necessarily the same talent as LeBron James. Pat Riley letting you know that he doesn't really dip into that tax unless it's a sure thing. And he took a season or two to do that with LeBron James, an all-time NBA talent. But again, the most important takeaway is that the players, we're seeing them in real time adjust to how these new CBA rules actually limit them, especially the middle tier players, the ones that are not Luka, the ones that are not Tatum, not on that status level that's going to get the $80 million to $60 million plus contract. The guys that are like a tier underneath that, it's going to be hard to justify their 40, 45 million, $50 million price tag if they're not necessarily going to bring those franchises past a certain level. Julius Randle, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Ingram, all going through that same situation. And finally, the most important takeaway is that the NBA fans will now be exposed, very similar to the NFL fan base, of players not necessarily holding out, but just being in, tit for tat disputes during contract years, due to the fact that these teams are very afraid of hitting the second apron into the luxury tax. So this is a very unique and in real time adaptation from the fan bases as well as the players with this new CBA. And I don't know why the league has made these rules so restrictive in a time where a lot of fans' interest really comes in when players get traded, when players go through, movement through different teams. And at the same time, they're entering streaming where the games are going to be a lot harder to find. There's a lot going on in the league right now at the same time. And yeah, this is this is a very clusterfuck of situations all happening at once. This situation in Miami is not going to end anytime soon, especially with Jimmy Butler having a player option for $50 million, which is more than likely the best available option he's going to have out there in the marketplace, unless he wants to go to a team like the Charlotte Hornets.